I would submit to you that this workshop is not going to be useful for you because the only way to give students 21st century skills is to make it part of your class. It is not going to happen by accident, and it's not going to happen by saying, dear students, go read this book right here about 21st century skills. That won't happen. So we're going to end up disagreeing that that's not going to work, I think. I'm going to move on because I have a couple of things to get through, and I don't think we're going to get any further with this one. Except that lower on your handout, I wanted to highlight a couple of things. The account, yes? Okay, so I get it that there are opportunities to have conversations with students about their time management. What I think might be missing are explicitly making it apparent what time management means. Okay, I don't know that people take it upon themselves to have conversations with students about scheduling their entire week. Under accountability, what I would have suggested under that in the handout would have been check-in times for larger assignments, so that we're not leaving it to chance that the students are being true and appropriate with their time management. It's a little bit of not trusting the student that I suggest needs to happen in order for them to learn what good time management looks like. Okay, I am pretty far away from where I wanted to be at this moment, so I'm going to move to item number 6, which I hinted at much earlier. Reflection is a key part of this process. As you heard a second ago, when there is reflection and metacognition, the student changes behavior. The research is quite clear that their recognition on their own of reflection causes them to change. So asking them what they need to change in themselves is going to be key to getting them to do it. I'm actually going to, I think, probably largely skip over what I was going to say on the next slide about critical thinking. We've previously talked about critical thinking as different from discipline to discipline, from class to class, even from teacher to teacher. I'm going to maybe stop only with the very generic statement that you should make explicit to your students what critical thinking looks like for you. So for me, an example of critical thinking is where the students define problems and list out the assumptions they're making, and then examine from other disparate viewpoints, and then finally they're able to explain. This is my schema, an example of critical thinking. It does not need to be yours, and I think people have very different schemas of what critical thinking looks like for them. All I'm trying to emphasize here is that I think students don't know what the words critical thinking mean put together, and in fact we don't agree when we as professionals sit and talk to each other about critical thinking. Takeaway 7 is pretty important. You've heard me say more than once that we need to be intentional with the students, that accidental learning, although it might happen for some students, is not a good way to make sure that learning occurs for everybody. That's true in any discipline. If we're teaching biology or dentistry or forestry, we cannot make it accidental. We have to be intentional. And intentional means using something called backward design. Has anyone heard of backward design before? Backward design? Some of you have. You start with the results. Right, so you start with the final outcomes in mind first. Here's what I want the students to look like at the end of this semester. They can do these things. They can do these 4 things. If that's true, then I look backwards from the end of the semester and I know instantly which content I have to give them so they can do those 4 things. I know which practice they have to do so they can do those 4 things. You see how that works? And this is true in all teaching, but it is also true in the soft skills. If you want them to become good in English language, you cannot just leave it to accident. You must be intentional. You must say on a piece of paper, maybe in the syllabus, by the end of the semester, the students can give impromptu speeches on a topic related to chemistry or whatever it is we're saying. If that's going to be the thing they're going to be able to do, you're going to have to give them content on impromptu speeches. You have to give them advice on how to do it. You're going to have to let them practice it. And then finally, you're going to have to assess that they can do it. Another piece of accountability that goes along with professionalism begins with PowerPoint. And even though we've had a couple of heated moments here already, I actually thought the heated moment would come here. How many people use PowerPoint to teach? Most people use PowerPoint to teach. Do most of you give the students the PowerPoint presentation? They can download it and print it out? Yep. Yep. Has any of you ever tried to say, like, no, I don't want to give that to you students? Yeah. You know, what happens to this when you say, you don't get that, students? They get mad. They get mad. They don't like it. The reason why is that the students, if you ask them, would say, like, I need that piece of paper because now I can not worry about taking all the notes. I can listen to what you're saying much more closely. Now there's a flip side to that same statement. If they don't need to take the notes because they're already there, from a brain point of view, they're allowed to have lower energy and not pay as much attention because the notes that I need, well, they're already right here. So they might not actually be paying as much attention. They might be paying less attention, in fact, because you've given them the notes. So at the end of the day, my recommendation to you, and I've been doing this for many dozens of years, is that you actually do not give them the notes ahead of time. It is unpopular with the students. The same thing, I have all this unpopular advice. Give cumulative tests and don't give them the notes ahead of time. They won't like either one of those things. It forces them to listen because they cannot, and they have to listen and then summarize because they can't say everything that you're saying by handwriting it. They have to summarize. Guess what? That's what they're supposed to do in a lecture. You're supposed to listen, decide what's important, and then only take notes on the things that are important. There's actually a study out there about laptops. I'm not making fun of my colleague here with the laptop because you're not sitting there typing everything I say. Undergraduate students, if they have a laptop, either they're playing a game, which is bad, or watching videos, or if, let's say they're actually taking notes, they're saying everything that you're saying. It's just dictation, which is also not good note-taking from a brain point of view. They're not thinking it through, right? Memory actually begins by them thinking about it so that it imprints on their memory. If they're just taking notes, if you just give them the notes, they're never going to think it. All they're really doing is delaying when they're going to deal with it. Oh, here's the notes. I'll look at that the night before the test. Yeah. I would rather have them come to class, no notes. You have to listen, take your own notes, and then study those notes, across the week. Retrieval practice.
So and then give them the thing after the end of the...
I actually don't give them the notes ever. Yeah, but as it turns out, most of the time, the notes are not, do you see this slide? Like, if I had given you this PowerPoint slide, would you feel like I have every information that he said about it? It's not there. This is a picture. Do I have notes? Yeah, I have notes. I don't know where that particular one is because I've left this. But I have notes at the bottom of all of my pages here, right? I have notes, but you don't see them. So if you want to give them the slides when there's no information on them, sure.
It's beneficial, rather.
It's
beneficial if you give them something which is not exactly the same. Because if they have something in their hand, whatever you are saying, they can write it over.
Yeah, I mean, I meet people who pull, like, they have, the problem begins if you have a word-heavy PowerPoint to begin with. I think that's a problem. That's not good. But sometimes people remove half the words and tell the students to write down the words. It's better than nothing, but I would rather the students have to take notes on just pictures or whatever. The visuals.
It depends on the type of the course you're offering. If it is highly quantitative, notes can be of different...
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. If there's a lot of numbers and quantitative, that can help. Okay, we only have a few minutes to talk about digital dexterity. So you may find me moving a little fast through this. We're getting close to the end here. But I'm not going to super speed. I don't like it when people speed up too much at the end of a presentation. That does not mean that you're learning any faster if I go through this faster. So it's something you should keep in mind for yourselves. This is simply saying that dexterity, using different technology tools, is not the same in every country. Right? I don't have Saudi on here, so I don't know how Saudi Arabia fares with this. Just the point being that this is not universal. It's not all students everywhere. And therefore, there will be differences in how people approach technology. Now, students, if you ask them, would say, I know technology very well. And they do know these technologies pretty well, right? I don't even, whether that's WhatsApp and Instagram and phones. They know those things pretty well, all right? Is that what our employers want them to use? No. They want them to use SPSS or Excel or even PowerPoint. And the students, that's not the same as their technology, right? So first of all, I think we need to recognize the students are not actually that good at technology, even though they think they are. They're good at their own technology. Now, we have a problem as teachers, though. So what you see here is a chart of different kinds of technology for teaching, and some of them are on the rise, and then some of them, like people are starting to get disillusioned because they don't do everything we thought they would. This technology adoption happens for every technology that's out there. And if you've been in the teaching game for a while, you know that there are lots of new products all the time. There's too many of them, so we cannot do all of them. However, what I do recommend is that you do use some technologies, let's leave it on this slide, some technologies every time. The way students become digitally literate, where they can learn new technologies, is by being forced to go through new ones beyond the ones that they do for fun. So I think you should have students do things in technologies like SPSS and Excel, the ones that will be needed in your discipline, and that you should trickle that out. The one caveat is that you can't have them learn 4 new technologies in a semester, right? Pick one. Pick one technology for that semester. And the same thing with what you learn as a teacher. Don't do all of them. This is too many. Those of you interested in this, you need to look it up. It's the hype cycle, excuse me, in general, refers to how this is always the same curve. If you look up horizon and hype cycle, you'll see the education version of this. There are educational tools that are on the rise and the ones that are here now and the ones that are overinflated. The other half of digital literacy, digital tech literacy, is students don't yet have information fluency. Information fluency means being able to gather, evaluate, and use data. They can gather it just fine. The problem is they get it from a place on the internet and then assume that it's true. They don't evaluate it very well. So teaching students how to evaluate information is a critical thing. In my own country right now, when it comes to news organizations, there are only 2 types. The ones on that side and the ones on that side. There's nothing at all in the middle. Nothing. And so we need to teach students in our country that whatever they're getting, it's biased in one direction, right? So a version of that is true for everything that involves information and data. The students need to evaluate the difference between a website they found that's a company selling something and then what they might find on a government website or what they might find in an educational journal. They're not the same. Okay, this is, I haven't said this one yet, but I think it's probably been in the back of your minds for many of you already, which is that this is interesting and all, but we've talked about 8 different soft skills, and I only have 1 class. So you cannot possibly do all of these soft skills in every class that you teach. You have to be selective. I might suggest that you choose 1, maximum 2, that you focus on for every class that you teach. And I don't have an opinion about whether you should switch those around, or maybe you're the person who's always going to focus on spoken English. That's what you're going to do. And that's fine. I have no objection to that. I'd simply suggest that you do try to tackle one of these soft skills and try to influence it into each of your courses, even if it's the same skill. There's too much to do all at once. Okay, so as it turns out, this is the last slide of the presentation, and it's a summary. So if there's a single slide to take a picture of, this might be the one. I'll leave it on later on so you can come up front and take a picture of this as well. But what you're looking at the top is the competencies that we wanted students to learn. Those are the soft skills the employers say the students do not have enough of. They don't do enough critical thinking, they have poor communication skills, don't know teamwork or leadership, bad professionalism, they're not global thinkers, and they don't know how to use digital technology. Those are the problems. That's the problem statement. Okay? Problem statement's in black. In green, there's no new information. You've seen all of those before. The green are the set of recommendations I have for you to address the problem statement in black. The recommendations, if you look at them together, the first one, the soft skills are your job. You have to own some part of this. Because if you guys don't tackle it, it doesn't get done. There's no system in place to make this happen unless you do it. And then the rest of them, I think many of them overlap with each other. You must teach it explicitly. You must give them content on it. And you must give the content in multiple ways. Dedicate class time to practice the soft skills. Integrate the soft skills into your assessments. Make sure there's reflection about soft skills. And then you have to be intentional rather than accidental to make sure that they occur. And then finally, don't do all of them. So that, I don't always provide this, but this is a single slide that captures what I think the overall messages of the whole talk. So maybe that's the slide I'm going to leave up and see if you have any questions for me. Things that we have not addressed. I'll entertain arguments as well. I've got it all wrong. Yes?
Regarding actually soft skills, it is probably on the college, because for our college and for each course that we have, we assign specific soft skills for it. It depends on the course itself, how the course is related to the real life.
Yep.
How the course is related to theory. So we assign specific soft skills for each course.
I'm actually very glad you said that because I forgot to say it elsewhere. And that's worth repeating into the microphone and for everyone else. He said something about at the curriculum level, there's been a decision made that some courses are going to do some things and other courses are going to focus on other skills. And that is exactly right. That is my ultimate hope, is that if this doesn't already exist in your department and in your program, that you have these conversations about the curriculum and very explicitly and intentionally decide this course is going to do written language, this course is going to do professionalism, and then everyone who teaches that course has to do professionalism. That's actually really the best way to do it.
That also we presented to the student at the beginning of each semester, that these are the soft skills that are required by this course.
Yep. And they know right up front what's expected of them.
And it has this much of grades for you. So if you don't do well, for example, in exams, there is other points that can give you more.
Well, that's just a grading trick. There's different ways to go about grading it, but I agree. Okay, I'm very close to the end of my time. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.